These videos are made for the purpose of entertainment. These are not made to give you an excuse to harass the original creator. I do not condone the harassment or bullying of the creators featured in these videos.
Hello everybody, my name is Axel the Baxolotl, and welcome back to another video! Today I'm going to be redesigning and rewriting a My Hero OC from 2018, Omakiyi, Kiki, Yagi. The creator of this character, Anime X Fangirl XX, hasn't been active on DeviantArt since about 2020, leaving the character abandoned. So now I'm here to redesign and rewrite the character because she's cute and doesn't deserve to be left to rot away. So let's get started. I don't really have a lot of problems with the design of the character. My main issues come from the bio, but I'm still going to be giving her design an update because it is 3 years old now. So the changes to her I made were pretty minimal. I didn't do a complete overhaul of her design because I didn't see a need to. I did not give her cat ears because her quirk is the ability to transform into animals, and I felt like that with her just having cat ears all the time was weird. Overall, not a big deal, but I still chose not to keep the cat ears. So for her everyday outfit, she still has a sweater and a skirt, but I pulled the skirt over top the sweater instead of having the sweater hanging over the skirt. I also gave her a very basic set of tennis shoes. The only thing I didn't keep was the scarf, just because I didn't want to, no other reason. Her hair I changed a bit, so now she's got like bubble braids on each side. There's also those two shorter tufts of hair that frame her face, and I also gave her a proper set of bangs instead of just the crazy locks of hair going everywhere. I didn't change her colors at all. They are all exactly the same as they were before, and even where they're placed is the same. I added some colors for her shoes, but that's about it. I even kept a little heart on her cheek, which I'm thinking is like a stamp she applies with makeup every morning, and she just kind of cycles through different stamp shapes. She has a heart, a star, a diamond, a clover, a little cat head, instead of it being a birthmark, but honestly it could go either way. I like the stamp idea more, just because then you could change what it is every now and again. Her hero outfit is what I changed the most. I was gonna have a normal standing reference with parts of her body transformed like in the original picture, but I didn't care enough, honestly, to go through and do that. So I tried my best to keep it as similar to the original as I could, but she's wearing a bodysuit underneath, a short sleeve jacket, and a skirt. She's wearing a pair of gloves and some boots. I put her hair up in pigtail braids so that her hair is out of the way when she's fighting. Also, I know with the way her hair is colored, the way the colors are distributed throughout the braid would probably not at all look like that. But do I care? No, not really. I wasn't going to spend hours trying to figure out how to color the stupid braid right, so I just went with the easiest option in my head. And it still looks okay. A little goofy, but it's not horrendous. I didn't keep the cape she wore, mainly because I forgot it was there in her original design, and I was not going to mess with what I had sketched out already. I refused. So no cape for Omakiyi. The colors were the biggest issue I had with this. I tried keeping them the same as before, I really did, but they just blend in so much together and I just wasn't vibing with the colors at all, so I ended up changing them almost completely. I kept the mint color as like an accent. The coat's collar and trim are the mint, and so is her skirt, and the rest of her outfit is shades of brown. I did try to keep it colorful in some way, but nothing was working. Nothing looked good. So I stuck with browns and the mint, and I think it turned out really nice. Alright, now that her design has been properly updated, it's time to go through her bio and update it as well. Starting with her quirk. Her original quirk reads as follows. Shapeshifter, she could transform fully or partially into an animal, but before she can transform into an animal, she has to be somehow involved in its death. Not killing, but being involved somehow. as some of its blood has to get on her skin, and then she could transform anytime. Which overall isn't awful, but her having to be involved in the animal's death in order to transform into the animals is ridiculous. I know there's a guy in My Hero that gains power by being embarrassed. He's only on screen for like 0.5 seconds, but he does exist. So it's not completely out of his world that her quirk activates from seeing the death of an animal, but it's not just the death, she also has to get blood on her, so there's 2 requirements for her to be able to transform. That, and I don't really like the has to be involved in the death part, mostly because the rest of her character is like super tragic, and this feels like it was added on so we would feel extra bad for her. Just adding on more things to make her more tragic when there wasn't really a need to do so. You could work that into her backstory, much like how Toga's backstory is written. I doubt people would view her positively if she has to be involved in an animal's death for her quirk, but it has to be a very important part of her story and her character for this to not feel like sympathy baiting. So there's 2 ways this quirk could be rewritten to keep the death thing. You could write it that she has to basically absorb the animal's soul through touch. As the animal is dying, she could touch them and absorb their life, which is what allows her to transform, and she keeps it forever. The drawback to this is the longer she stays transformed, the more animal-like she becomes, and she can 100% just end up as, let's say, a normal cat for a prolonged period of time. Possibly forever, if she doesn't remember she's human and turns off her quirk. With this rewrite, she wouldn't be able to just grow cat ears or bird wings. It would have to be a full transformation. I guess with a stupid amount of training, she could learn how to grow just cat ears, but only be able to hold that for so long before they just disappear on their own. The second way you could rewrite this, which I personally like more because it gives more variety, her quirk works much like Toga's does, but it's not limited to just blood. She could eat dinosaur bones and transform into a dinosaur. She accidentally swallows a mosquito, she could transform into a mosquito for a little bit. The amount of DNA she absorbs correlates to how long she could hold the transformation. This would work well for stealth work, but it also works for more than just hero work. She could be used to make giant strides in seeing what certain animals looked like and sounded like before they went extinct. And I think that's cool. Another part of this quirk is she would be able to just transform certain parts of her body, like Omakiyi does, and she's able to hold that transformation longer if she just transforms her legs or arms or grows a pair of wings. Now for the name of the quirk, is fine, but it lacks flavor. You know what I mean? Shapeshifter, yeah, it's okay, but it's also boring. I was trying to think of alternative quirk names, and the first one that came to mind was fucking Animorph, which I mean is accurate, but also that's the name of that godforsaken book series, so I don't think it should be used. But also I kind of want a picture of Omakiyi Animorph cover style, just her transforming into an animal, but we get all the cursed in between frames. Like, the first one that comes to mind is the Animorph book with the kid turning into a horse. I just think that would be so funny. You could call it Animorphing, Beast Shifter, Animal Walker, Beast Walker, but now I'm stuck on Animorphing, and I think that's what I'm gonna go with. It fits perfectly and gives the opportunity to make fake, funny Animorph book covers. I'm keeping her hero name because there's nothing wrong with it. Anime is totally fine for a hero name. Nothing wrong with that at all. Now moving on to rewriting her backstory. In her original backstory, she grew up in an orphanage up until she was 13, where she is adopted by All Might after some dudes raided the orphanage for reasons. She then trains with Midoriya and gets into UA early from recommendations. While she was growing up in the orphanage, the caretakers actively told the other kids to not interact with Omakiyi, also for reasons. It's implied because she looks different, which I still think is dumb. If she had a more significant mutation like Shoji, Spinner, or the Shark Lady, who I don't know the name of, I could buy it, since it's shown that people with mutation quirks like that are treated like shit in this society. But she literally just looks like a normal girl. But anyways, her quirk manifested after she decided at the age of 6 to sneak away from the orphanage and explore. She gets lost and watches a cat get hit by a car, and then she transforms into a cat. She gets back to the orphanage and uses a quirk to stay a cat so the other kids play with her without knowing it's her. Then the orphanage gets a bunny, a new kid shows up that plays with Omakiyi, and then the new kid uses their quirk to kill the bunny in front of Omakiyi. We then learn, after she buries the bunny, that her eyes changed color. They were green, but now they're pink for reasons. The next scene is the guy raiding the orphanage, and she transforms and basically runs from the man until All Might and the cops show up. Overall, the original backstory is a huge mess of random events and unnecessary cruelty towards Omakiyi to make us feel bad for her. And of course, her being adopted by All Might is a pretty poor excuse to get her to interact with the main cast of characters. Mostly because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why he would, in this instance, just choose to adopt a child. This backstory can work, but it needs reworked, so everything makes a lot more sense. So, for my rewrite. Omakiyi grows up in what she believes is an orphanage. In reality, which she learns much later, it's actually a facility built and managed by All for One, to raise soldiers, or harvest their quirks and turn them into Nomu if they prove useless otherwise. It's a facility in the middle of basically nowhere, surrounded by woods, and whenever a child is adopted, it's just them being let off to be cold, basically. The caretakers of this facility are obviously pretty strict. Before the children's quirk manifests, the children are just basically put through everyday schooling. Reading, writing, physical education, all the basics, and then 30 minutes of outdoor time where the kids are permitted to play in a walled-off area of the facility that had a pretty standard playground. Omakiyi grows up in this facility. She's smart, a pretty fast learner, and not super social. She tries to be social with the other kids, but the other kids kind of think she's weird, so they avoid her. She doesn't really let it get her down, so she'll just play pretend by herself when they have outdoor time. Around the age where their quirks start developing, hers obviously didn't show, since it requires her to consume animal DNA, and that's not something you would figure out right away. So the workers ran tests and the x-ray to see if she has the extra toe bone, which she does, so obviously she should have a quirk. This is when the experimenting began. They gotta figure out her quirk, so they start testing different possibilities that wouldn't manifest, obviously, like a fire quirk or super strength. So for quite a few months, she's forced to go through a bunch of different tests to see if her quirk manifests. They basically torture her in various different ways until they finally discover her transformation quirk. When her quirk manifests, she can only transform ears and tails, so like paws. She can't completely transform into an animal. Once all the kids' quirks are settled, that's when quirk training begins. This is where we can include the animal death of her original backstory. Her quirk requires animal DNA. Best way to get that DNA for the best results of her quirk is blood, and it's easier to get her to consume. The other options are arguably worse. Can you imagine having to eat hair? Like not just a single strand, but like spoonfuls of hair for your power to work? I bet I made so many of you gag at the thought. You're welcome, and I'm not sorry. Anyways, you could have it after a while of them training these kids. They have Omakiyi extracting the blood from the animal, eventually draining the animal completely to see how it affects her quirk, and you could have them do that like multiple times with various different animals. Being forced to kill animals obviously puts a damper on her personality, and she becomes even more secluded than she was, and around the age of 10 is where she meets Ming. Ming is a cat she meets during outside time that she names and takes care of. A little off from where the kids usually play, there's a crack in the wall that keeps them in range of the facility. This cat was small enough to fit through this crack and come in and out of the play area as she pleases. I'm gonna kind of rush the rest of this because I'm tired. and so this video isn't super long, but Omakiyi's life is basically wake up, schoolwork, lunch, quirk training, outdoor time, and play with Ming. More schoolwork, dinner, then bed until she's 13, where the pro heroes find and start a raid on the facility. The workers are left with little choice but to start killing the children off and escaping themselves after orders are given from All for One to do so. They can't transport all the kids they had in this group, so he was just going to take the loss on this facility and move on. Omakiyi, during the chaos of everything that is happening, manages to escape outside of the play area, but barely. Now this is where you could write it. She got lucky and they had already done quirk training, and they were past outdoor time and on to schoolwork, so she already consumed animal blood, so she was able to transform and escape through the opening that Ming goes through. Or make this sad and have this be before quirk training and have her find Ming's body crushed under some rubble, and she has no choice but to drink Ming's blood to escape so she doesn't die too. Either way, she makes it outside and escapes into the forest alone and unsure of what the fuck to do because she's 13. It's the middle of the night and the heroes of police are now doing a patrol of the area looking for villains and the like. All Might is the one who finds her. She tries to run off, but she's exhausted and her quirk is slowly reaching its time limit. He manages to reassure her he's not going to hurt her, he's there to help, and this is where we learn, when he brings her to safety, that she's the only survivor. The rest of the kids are dead. Now we have a pretty good setup for All Might to actually adopt this child. This horrible facility is run by All for One, and this child was raised here and was in the process of being trained to be one of his little soldiers. So now, All Might feels somewhat responsible for her. Had he defeated All for One all those years ago, she would have never had to suffer this horrible fate, so he takes her in. She starts adjusting to everything, and when she's 14 is when he starts working at UA. He brings her along and she does her studies in the teacher's lounge, or with Nezu or other teachers depending on the day, and this is how she could start interacting with the main cast. All Might adopts Child. Child accompanies him to work because he's nervous to leave her alone, or with others. All for One does have her files and knows who she is, so logically, if one of his minions spot her, they could just take her and bring her back to All for One, and he doesn't want that, obviously. This, so far, is a pretty good setup to how her story can go. It's still got pretty much everything from the original, just rewritten, so there's a somewhat proper timeline of events that makes sense, instead of this all being mishmashed together with little reasoning behind what's actually going on. It's a bit sloppy, a pretty basic rough draft for what could be her new bio. As of scripting this, I'm exhausted, and I've been thinking about how to rewrite this character for days, so I don't have the energy to flesh this out anymore. I just want this to be done. Maybe once I've lessened my workload significantly and I'm not dealing with so much shit out in the real world, I'll revisit this and edit everything I've written out today and flesh it out a lot more. But that is my redesign and my rewrite for Omakiyi. I hope you enjoyed. Most of this bio, again, was rushed, and I was just kind of throwing ideas at a wall to see what sticks and what doesn't. I don't really flesh these things out unless I feel a need to. But anyways, that's it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you are new, and check out all my social medias linked down in the description below, because if you don't, I am going to steal your toes. Goodbye.